Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Nicole and today I'm going to be revisiting books from 2022. So this is not only going to be a book haul revisit, this is going to be talking about what I read in November of 2022, what I DNF'd, what I liked, what I didn't like, and of course what I hauled during that month. And the big question, have I read it? Have I not read it? Have I unhauled it? What happened to all those books? So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start out by talking about what I read in November 2022. I did this last month and sort of unintentionally included talking about what I read during that month, and I actually found it kind of interesting. So I'm going to repeat it this month, maybe with a few more graphics. Who knows? Anyway, I will initially just scroll on the screen for you what the Storygraph says I read during November of 2022. That is how I was tracking my books at the time for the most part, and I think it's pretty accurate. This is what I learned from looking at this information myself. I wrote myself a few notes. One was that I was definitely still in my sort of fantasy reading mode. I was definitely watching a lot of BookTube, which I can tell just because I was reading a lot of things that people were talking about on BookTube at that time. I had not started my BookTube channel yet. That wouldn't happen for an entire another year. I discovered a new favorite author, which is Yoko Agawa. I did also read the entire series of The Legend of Ellie Munpress, not that month, but I started it that month, and I would say that that is safely my absolute all-time favorite fantasy series. I also discovered this month that not all series are going to be great, and that I may not like all hyped books. This was the month where I tried my first Haruki Murakami. Wow, I'm struggling to talk here. And I read After Dark, and this is not one of his, I feel like, known books or more talked about books, but it was one I happened to find used and really cheap, so I read it, and I'm still confused. Going into what I DNF'd that month, apparently nothing, which seems like a lie to me. If you have followed me for a while, you know I will DNF some books, but apparently that month I didn't. And so now the part that you're probably all waiting for is what I hauled in November 2022. So according to the Storygraph, I hauled 26 books that month. Now, this may or may not be true, not because I don't think it's possible for me to haul 26 books in one month, but more because the way Storygraph tracks your books is it tracks when you add it to the Storygraph of saying you want to read it, not necessarily when you've added it saying you own it. So sometimes the date on there is kind of not correct. I recently made myself a little book collection book in which I just write the title of the book and the author and the month in which I actually collected the book. And then I'm keeping track of whether I have unhauled the book or whether I've read it, that kind of thing. And it looks like this. Crazy pants on the inside. So now this book, up to who knows how many pages, this many of them, has every book that I've ever owned since 2021. So that's something to see, let me tell you. I'm going off of what I have in this book, which is a combination of 3 different trackers I've used over the years. I ended up with 26 books that I've owned. So have I read all 26 of the books that I supposedly hauled in this November? No. Let me give you the breakdown. What you do need to know is that of those 26 books, I have 10 books that are still unread and that I still own. I'm going to go through what those books are, what my thoughts are on them, and maybe even investigate if there's any of them that I should be unhauling at this point. I don't think so. I've pulled them all off the shelf. They're all sitting here next to me. I'm pretty sure these are all books that I want to read, so maybe we'll also discover why I haven't read them yet. I don't know. The first book, and this is in no particular order other than the order that I just threw them on my couch, is Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. I'm pretty sure Dostoevsky, with the brothers Karamazov, came up last month on my revisit. So yeah, I'm clearly just avoiding reading Dostoevsky because I now am realizing I've had this book for 3 years. And you know what? I recall buying this book. I bought it used, which is why it's already pre-tabbed, because it was pre-loved. But my son had this copy on his bookshelf, and I was kind of dabbling around and looking at it and thinking about reading it, but he was like, oh, I'm going to read it next. And I really liked his edition, so I was like, okay. And clearly I went to the used bookstore and found the edition that I liked used and bought it thinking, I'm going to read this soon. And here we are 3 years later. A book that has, I feel like, come up frequently this year is the Forsyte saga. I didn't realize I've had this book for so long, but that's how long it's been staring at me on my shelves going, read me, read me, read me. And I've mentioned, because I also partially feel like this was in my revisit last month. If you see repeats my revisits, it's because the data that I have is a little off all the way up through 2025. What can I do? Anyway, I am interested in reading this book. I have known for a while that it's one of the oldest books on my shelf. And yeah, so here it is. And one of the reasons it's still there is just because it's a chunky book. And it's not that it intimidates me because of that, but it's more that I only put so many chunky books on my TBR per month. And this one just hasn't been making the cut. I did find out this year that this is actually a bind up of 3 books that are all in one series. And so now I am going to think of it as a shorter book because I'll just start the first book in the series and read that. And I think I've talked about this before. The first book is only 300 pages. So that seems a lot more doable just in terms of fitting it into my reading schedule. But in addition to that, I am no longer doing monthly TBRs. I'm playing my TBR game as I go. So that should also help with that situation. The next book is kind of a surprise to me, and that is The Three Musketeers. And the reason I say it's kind of a surprise is I know this has been on my TBR for quite a while. And I'm just surprised that I still haven't picked it up. I think I read The Count of Monte Cristo earlier in the year that I bought this book, like in January, February, and then bought this book in November, I'm pretty sure in response to reading The Legend of Elimon Press, because I'm pretty sure I read that and went, wow, I really like fight scenes using swords, and I knew I liked Alexandre Dumas, and so of course, what should I read next? This book at some point, but I haven't yet. That's what surprises me. Sentimental Education by Flaubert. There's no particular reason that I can think of that I haven't read this, other than that I haven't read any of his works yet, and so I think I'm just building up to, at some point, getting to that. I have no preference between reading that first and Madame Bovary. I think I got a copy of Madame Bovary first and then got that one used. I don't know. I also have The Sorrows of Young Werther. This I was inspired to read after rereading Frankenstein for like the 4th or 5th or something time, and realizing that in Frankenstein, the monster mentions a lot of the books that he's reading, and this is one of them. And this book has a really major impact on him and his actions. Like, if I recall correctly, he actually goes out and does something in response to his reading of this book, and that made me really curious and longing to read this book. However, at some point I need to get the modern library edition of it because I absolutely love that cover. I don't know why, but that guy on there is just so sad and pathetic, and it just makes me want to read it. Supposedly, because I do own the book and, as you're seeing, have owned it for a while and still haven't read it. I also was in a period where I was wanting to read more Chinese and Japanese literature and just classic Asian literature in general. But during this month, I picked up The Romance of Three Kingdoms. And this is a book that I've been wanting to read. It's something that came up in a video game that my son was reading. And it also came up in something else that I was reading. So I just kind of kept coming across this idea of the Three Kingdoms and what was going on during this time period, and I really just kind of need to get to it. It is a human epic of warlords, schemers, heroes, and villains battling for the throne, has enthralled readers for more than 500 years, dramatizing the violent destruction of the Han dynasty in the 2nd century and the tumultuous rise of three kingdoms vying to dominate China. And that just sounds so good, and I don't know why it hasn't pulled me in yet. I have The Golden Notebook by Henry James. This is part of the fairly large collection of Henry James works that I have, so we'll see. I was finding his books for a really good price, and I knew he was an author I really wanted to try, and I don't know, I'm just full of excuses. This is about a rich American art collector and his daughter Maggie, and they buy for themselves and they buy in for themselves and to their greater glory, a beautiful young wife and a noble husband. And that sentence makes no sense to me. I don't understand what it means to buy in for yourself, but I'm assuming that I will understand what that means once I have read this book. I do like books that are about people that are really into art in theory in the back of my mind. Like, because as I say that to you, I'm thinking of one book that was about an artist that I liked and one that I didn't. So is that actually true? I don't know. I like reading about art in my books. That is true. Okay, I also have Tirant Blanc. I knew that at some point I wanted to read Don Quixote, which I just did in the last year. And Don Quixote references heavily, and it was kind of inspired. I don't know if specifically by this book, but at least books like this book. And so, yeah, this is a classic, despite the very like 70s rendition I have, the lusty medieval classic. Like, everything about this edition just really gets me. It's a major find, a superhero from the days of knighthood. I hung on every word. I'm hanging on every word that's on here. It was praised by Cervantes in Don Quixote as the best book of its kind in the world. This is the best book of its kind in the world. I mean, where else are you going to get your lusty medieval classic? I don't know, but I want to read it. I keep saying that. I keep saying I want to read it. But if I've owned these books for 3 years, do I actually want to read them? Yes, because I did actually have a chance where I thought about unhauling this book and I didn't. The rest of them I've just been shuffling around on my bookshelf and avoiding, but that one specifically I truly thought about unhauling and didn't. I have Evelina by Francis Burney, and I also have Camilla. This is the last of the 2 books. Sorry about the glare there. And yeah, I want to get to Francis Burney. I own 3 of her works total, I think, and I've read none of them. Now, she's kind of on the back burner right now because most, if not all of her books that I own are epistolaries. Maybe just the one that I own is an epistolary, this one. And I'm currently reading Clarissa, which is an epistolary and set during the same time period and written during the same time period. And I just didn't want to start another book during that time period because it's such a specific feel that I was afraid I was going to get the stories confused. So at least for that one, I have a real excuse. Okay, that's it. Those are the 10 books that I hauled in November of 2022 and haven't read. The other 16, I guess, something has happened to them. Hopefully I have some graphics that make everything I share just slightly less confusing. I'm doubting it. Anyway, that's it for me. Let me know, especially regarding these 10 books. Have you read any of them? Are there any that you would say I am sleeping on and should get to? Are they these 2 that you're going to talk about? Is it weird that they actually kind of match? Probably not, because they're both Penguin Deluxe, but they do kind of match. I feel like that's also some sort of sign. But okay, other than these 2, any of the other 8 that you think I should get to sooner than later, drop me a comment below. Let me know why. Don't spoil the plot. And yeah, that's it for today. And I will talk to you next time. I guess I can't really wave, but bye.